Today's devotional is on Genesis 19 through 20. The title of today's portion of scripture is called Sodom and Gomorrah Destroyed. And to give a little preface for any young ears listening, parents, there are some graphic stories in these two chapters. And so this is just a heads up. Sodom and Gomorrah, we've learned how these cities are very wicked. Lot chose to plant near these cities and has seen a lot of the repercussions of that. He already had to be rescued once, and now he's having to face his whole land being destroyed. But God is faithful, and Abraham interceded on behalf of these places and said, God, if there's 10 righteous people, will you spare the city? And God said yes, which is very telling that there weren't even 10 righteous people here. And God was faithful to rescue Lot and his family and then destroy the city, to rescue the only righteous people. And even in the stories we read, it makes me wonder, how righteous was Lot? Lot's character seems to be in question in my eyes, because the first story we read about, the angels of the Lord visit Lot. Lot brings them home, wants to make them a meal so that they can sleep in his house, and he's going to host them, because initially they were just going to sleep in the city outside. But I think Lot knew how evil the city was and was like, no, you got to come with me. The people of the town heard about these visitors and went up to Lot's house and said, bring out these men so that we can sleep with them. And Lot said, no, please. This is where things get dicey, and it conflicts with the justice in me. He then offers his virgin daughters to these wicked men. And I think this just really highlights that when you are surrounded by wickedness, it reminds me of that verse that bad company corrupts good character. It corrupts your character. When you're around it and influenced by it, it can really hurt your judgment and the way you listen to wisdom. And so this is hard for me to understand, because he offers his virgin daughters to spare his hosts. And I looked into it a bit more, and apparently back in the day, if you were a host to people that were visiting, it was seen to be a really high role and something you had to take really seriously to protect them. But it's still, in my brain, is like, what the heck? The only way I can justify it is he lived in a really wicked city, and his heart probably had areas where he needed a lot of work in too, clearly. But the Lord was faithful to rescue Lot because he was keeping his promise to Abraham. And thankfully, when Lot offered his daughters, the people were so wicked, they were like, no, now we're going to kill you, Lot. And the angels of the Lord took Lot, brought him into the house, bolted the door, and confused all of the men, blinded the men so that they couldn't touch him or hurt him. This just highlights God's sovereignty and his protection. That when he has a mission, nothing can stop him. He blinded all of the men, bolted the door shut. He has angels visiting Lot. And so it just reminds you of what God is capable of doing in the midst of our lack of judgment and bad character sometimes. I literally, next to the statement when he offers his daughters, put a question mark. And I highlight that to show you that it's okay to question what you're reading and to want to understand more. So the angels of the Lord asked Lot, hey, do you have any other family members here? He says, get them out, because the city is going to be destroyed. So Lot rushes to go talk to his daughter's fiancés and says, hey, we need to go. We need to leave. But the daughter's fiancés don't take him serious and don't really think it's a big deal and don't do anything about it. I really love this part. In verse 16, it says, when Lot still hesitated, the angel seized his hand and the hand of his wife and the two daughters and rushed them to safety outside the city, for the Lord was merciful. So Lot was still hesitating after all of these warnings, and God still was faithful and forced him to leave. The angel said, run for your life and don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you will be swept away. That is a very important verse, because they were instructed to not look back. And this is a very famous story too, because we learn that Lot's wife looked back in verse 26 as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. And the reason she was turned into a pillar of salt is because she disobeyed. And the act of her looking back really highlighted her longing for what was, when God was instructing them to move forward. And that will preach for you and I. How often do we look back on things, or do we meditate on the good old days, or wish things were how they used to be, or wonder if we should be back where we were? But it's a good reminder that we need to continue to look forward. We can't change the past. We can only walk forward with the Lord. And it's interesting that she was longing and looking back at such a corrupt place. And I think that can really be a symbol for our bad habits, our sinful tendencies, the things that feel good but we know we shouldn't be doing. And God calls us out of it, to leave it, and we shouldn't look back. And I think that speaks to moments where God delivers us and heals us from things, that we shouldn't look back and long for the old thing, but keep moving forward into where He's leading us, into healing, into freedom. I think it's very interesting that this is our reading this week, because I feel like I'm in a season of not looking back. I feel like the Lord is teaching me a lot about this. And stop looking back. Stop wondering if what happened then was really right or not. And continue to trust that what I'm saying now and what I said then was true, and keep moving forward. Stop looking back. Stop questioning. Looking back can cause this lack of trust and more confusion, where I need you, God says, to just keep trusting what I've been instructing you to do and keep moving forward. In my experience, the enemy loves to get me to question my discernment and what I knew in the past, out of fear of making wrong decisions or doing things wrong, failure. But continuing to trust God is continuing to trust what He told you then and where He has you now, and to simply move forward. Then we move into another really disturbing story where Lot and his daughters have an exchange. And so we've learned that Lot's daughters' fiancés were left in Sodom and Gomorrah, and that was destroyed. So now they don't have their husbands. They were worried that they weren't going to have any children because there weren't any people that they could have children with. And so they do the unthinkable and decide to get their father drunk and sleep with their father, both of them, so that they both can get pregnant and have children and keep the family line going. I literally wrote, it made me laugh so hard, like 5 minutes ago. And this was something I wrote a long time ago. I wrote the word no, because it's just absolutely not. No. But Lot's daughters came from Sodom and Gomorrah. Again, a very wicked place. So you can imagine the kind of wickedness that was going there and feeding their hearts too. And this was just a very different time where a lot of incest happened, but still, no. But that's what happens when sin grows. It becomes normal, and one thing leads to the next. And if you don't stop it, it will continue to grow and continue to make you think that, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And you continue to push more and more boundaries into more and more wicked and crazy things. We will cover chapter 20 at the end of week recap. And that's it for today. But don't look back. Move forward. Focus on what's ahead. Okay?